I thank Ray for his comments and I'm on step stop, sorry, to open the case side of the
Well, thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair. I'm the Vice President for all my sins of the Debating Society at the University of Exeter, and so I sort of feel your pain in organising one of these every Thursday or whatever you have one. So thank you so much for inviting us down, and thanks for organising a debate, which I feel very strongly about. I'm going to split my speech, I think, into two halves. I'm going to do some Republican myth-busting of the first half. For the second half, I'll just begin to lay out the case for constitutional monarchy as a brilliant system of government. But before I do, just a quick few bits of rebuttal. Ray, you said that the Queen can't be criticised oh my God, my phone's going, in Parliament, but we know that's not true. One of your most vocal members of Parliament, Paul Flynn, has regularly criticised the monarchy in Parliament. He did so, in fact, on the 26th of July and the 6th of January this year, so there's some examples. The idea that the media in this country is somehow the sort of the mouthpiece of the monarchy, I also dispute, bearing in mind Rupert Murdoch is a big Republican and owns the Times and the Sun, and the Independent and the Guardian are also fairly critical of the monarchy as well. So I would dispute that. I'll also dispute the idea that Ireland has a good system, bearing in mind that their president was elected with about 40% of the vote, and he's certainly not neutral, bearing in mind he took €840,000 of campaign funds from the Labour Party. But I'm sure we'll debate Higgins later. Let's move on to some Republican myth-busting. The first one we always hear: the monarchy is undemocratic, and I just don't accept that argument, and I don't accept it for a number of reasons. The first is that 95.7% of us in 2010 voted for a political party which had the preservation of the monarchy in its manifesto. Okay, people probably weren't thinking when they put that X in the box, what's the most important issue? It's the monarchy, right, I'll vote for them. But clearly, if 95.7% of the MPs in Parliament have stood under manifestos supporting the monarchy, then being a Republican isn't a particularly big vote winner. So it's in there because people vote for parties that want to keep the same, don't want to debate it. If you want to get rid of the European Union, or you want to get rid of electricity or something, you vote for a party most likely to debate that in Parliament. And the simple fact of the matter is that British people aren't doing that. Also, I would say that the idea that Elizabeth II is somehow ruling without the consent of the people, or reigning, I should say, before you take me up on that point, reigning without the consent of the people is not true. I mean, millions of people turn out for all events, thousands every day go and see her when she cuts the ribbon, however subtle her role may be. And I think to say that she rules out the consent of the people is not true. I'll also bust the myth that the monarchy is somehow archaic, discriminatory, and sort of props up some class system. Now, it is a bit old-fashioned, of course it is. I'm not going to say it's the most modern institution, but if the people want that, then I don't really have any problem with that. And it's also unfair to say that it hasn't taken steps towards modernisation over the past 60 years. And the final point, which I think really doesn't stand up, is the idea that there's lots of taxpayers' money going to this bloated old family. I mean, the idea that, that monarchy is expensive, let's go and get ourselves one of those cheap presidents is absolutely ridiculous. President Sarkozy, €85.3 million went to his office. Mr. Obama goes on $4 million tax dollar paid flings to Hawaii. The idea that presidents are cheaper just because they're elected is not true. So there's some Republican myths for you to think about, and I'll go and start laying out the case for why our dear Lady Elizabeth, and indeed all who follow her, make a better head of state than an elected politician. I mean, I think the Queen is a great head of state. I once called Graham out when we were debating. Graham to the head of their organisation, and he sort of said, the Queen has been very good, and we won't get rid of the monarchy as long as she's Queen. Even Julia Gillard, the Australian Prime Minister, pin-up girl of the Australian Republican movement, said, after she did her sort of quasi-bow, that Elizabeth II, was a pretty sound head of state and done her job very well. And I don't think an elected politician would be any better. I mean, for a start, Tony Benn, who's quite left-wing on some things, said an elected head of state would be a bad idea because you'd have two sources of democratic legitimacy, and that would cause problems. You may say lots of democratic legitimacy is good. I agree. I certainly agree with you on House Lords being elected. But I sort of have issues with how constitutionally sound it is to have two sort of apexes that are elected, sort of issues there with who has the right to take out certain policies. We don't have that at the moment. The Queen does act on advice of the Prime Minister, and she hasn't vetoed, the monarch of the UK hasn't vetoed a piece of legislation for about 300 years or so. Yeah, and I know what you're going to say. It's wrong. And you said, that's another thing I wanted to rebut about actually. You said that The Guardian had launched some crusade for freedom and suddenly discovered all that stuff about Prince Charles. On the 15th of January, The Guardian said, we got it wrong. When we said that he vetoed all these pieces of legislation, what he actually meant was his consent to be sought for that piece of legislation, and it had been given. Fine. They asked him, is this piece of legislation okay? He said, yes, fine. No vetoing at all of the legislation. So, but that should have been at the beginning, but I forgot. I'm sorry. But I do think the Queen makes a good head of state, and I think all of these, the Republic website has some great suggestions. It has Sir David Attenborough, is one that's suggested on your website. He's a monarchist, so it definitely would be him. They say Tony Blair, and they do a list of celebrities. No Republican law has a celebrity as our head of state. It would be a politician, and it wouldn't be us really who got to decide who's our head of state. It would be the tick-box bureaucrats in Whitehall choosing their favoured man, probably a man, from the top of their party list. So the idea that this would somehow cover us in sovereignty is not really true. Time's getting on, so I just want to make a case. I'll finish with an Elizabeth II quote, which you said she'd never said, and she has. That's not true. But I just want to, look, becoming a republic would make us more democratic. The UN lists the most democratic countries in the world as Norway, Canada, Australia, and Sweden. They're all monarchies. It wouldn't make us more equal. There are far more important pieces of legislation that we could pass to increase equality in this country. Simple fact of the matter is that it works, people like it. And as Elizabeth II once said, I cannot make you laws, I cannot administer justice, I cannot lead you into battle, but I can do one thing. I can give you my heart and my devotion to these old islands. That's the sort of head of state I want. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you very much.